and so you were just kind of hanging up there for days until you asphyxiated. It wasn't like you bled to death or anything. And so I thought, wow, that was really a great one. I like the wheel. The wheel is just like a big wheel with spokes, and they wove you in the spokes, which, the human body doesn't weave that well. So what they do is break your bones and then weave you and break a bone and weave you until you're woven into this wheel. And then they would put you on a spike in the middle of town, and people would come around and spin you as you're going through. This was before television and movies, It was like, hey, you want to go into town and spin some people? Come on, kids, let's go spin, some people. So, very dark stuff. I mean, the Iron Maiden was there and all of that. But one of my favorite ones, which the church used, I thought, was what I call the tenderizer. It was a big wooden keg, and they put you in the keg, and then they drove stakes into the keg and rolled you down a hill to the bottom. You were kind of tenderized, ready for salvation, I think, in some way. At that moment, you roll out a little bloody at the other side. So, so the Catholic Church was a little tough on crime, but because they had this population that was tended towards sin, they said, so they had to be a little bit tough. So the pilgrimage was a part of that punitive stuff, but I don't want you to think of the pilgrimage in such a negative way, because I want you to see yourselves as pilgrims, of course, and I want you to see your life as a pilgrimage journey. There's two different kinds of people oftentimes on journeys like this, and one is a pilgrim, the other is a tourist, and you can actually tell the difference because tourists have extended eyes, right? They're looking and that eye is usually seen in a camera form, right? So that's really great. Tourists are great, and we love them here in San Francisco because they bring lots of money in, so we have to celebrate the tourists, and I love them. But a pilgrim has a searching heart. It's not that those two are necessarily separate. You can be actually a pilgrim and a tourist at the same time, and then you end up not only with a transformed life, but you've got great photographs, you can share with people along the way. So, but kind of know that there's two different kinds of ways, different kinds of searching that goes on there, right? It's very important. And in fact, St. Augustine says, "Salvator ambulando," which is a Latin phrase that means you can solve it by walking. So walking is good. I walk back and forth to work every day because I believe St. Augustine was right. So that's pilgrimage and tourist. Now I just want to talk about some symbolisms here that come up with a pilgrimage journey, and then we'll move to some actual things that will lead us to this spot that we're sitting in right now. But the first kind of general stuff has to do with the perspective of the pilgrimage, and it's called the microcosmic, macrocosmic perspective, and it comes from a guy named Boethius who lived in the 2nd century. He was a Roman Christian, and he was in prison through most of his life, and he wrote a lot of books while he was in prison. But what Boethius does is kind of interesting. What he does is he takes some Jewish tradition, but Christian tradition, and also Greek tradition and Roman tradition, and combine them together in a very curious way so that you get a view of the universe. It's kind of interesting, and that is that the universe, the large universe, is the microcosm, and it's a mirror that reflects the microcosm, which is the mind of man. So the mind of man is the microcosm, and that's also a mirror that reflects the universe. So the Boethius says that the big picture is a mirror and the small picture is a mirror, and they reflect each other. So out of that construction, of course, comes systems like astrology, that you can look up into the heavens and see patterns in the sky that can tell you your future or tell you something about your life. And so the Boethius version of the microcosmic, macrocosmic perspective is used today by a lot of people. I'm totally into astrology. I mean, I'm a Cancer man, and I am so Cancer, although I'm totally fluid. I'm a water child, a crab. Look, I put a tattoo on my back. It's a big crab. It's a moon child kind of thing happening there. So I'm totally into it. It's great stuff, right? So if you put it on your body, it's permanent. You got to believe in it. So it's kind of fun, about that. I find it interesting. Some other things that come up around that also has to do with if you see something out in nature that looks like something that about a human, then you can actually take that and use it if that part of you is sick or having a problem. Like for instance, the mandrake root looks like a human in a sense, and so they believe in the old days that you could use the mandrake root for medicine because it looked like humans. It must help humans, in some way. Harry Potter used that, you remember that moment when they were repotting the mandrakes. Very funny stuff. But if you found a nut out there in the world that looked like a human ear, they believe that you could turn that nut into ear medicine because obviously if it looked like an ear, it must help you in some way, help your ear, if you had an ear problem. So this is this notion of the microcosm, macrocosm. And so how this ties into the pilgrimage journey is that the large picture is your entire life, and that's the microcosm of who you are in a sense. And what you would want, of course, at least what I would want for you, is that you would have a pilgrim life, and that is a life of transformation, that you would have been transformed in your life. I would not want you to just be a tourist and at the end of your life have a bunch of pictures, and then you die and there you are leaving a bunch of pictures. And that's not so good. You need to have lived a life of great transformation and discovered something about yourself. So how do you do that? How can you guarantee that you're going to have a life that can be described in such a way? And so if you can do it by looking at the microcosm, and that is the daily event. So if you turn each of your days into a pilgrimage experience, then you don't have to worry about your life. Believe me, your life will be a pilgrimage, and you'll be a pilgrim along the way. So I would encourage that. Now, so there's 5 steps to this journey, and the 5 steps are, number 1, as I said, the preparation, the cleansing. And so you can do this in many different ways, of course. So I'm thinking about applying this, of course, and helping you make an application to the Academy of Art University, right? So one very simple way of applying this would be if you came to the Academy and you had to show your portfolio to get into the Academy. You needed to go into the portfolio and clean it up, right? You didn't want to show the lousy drawings you did. You only show the best drawings that you did and all of that stuff. And so that would be a little bit of a cleansing kind of process that's going on. But also, financially at the Academy, most important, right, of course, is that you need to not have any rubber checks bouncing around anywhere, so you have to clean up your financial situation. That's always a good thing to do, right? So there's this cleansing process. And then you go in to the school, and the second part of the journey is the journey itself. So you have the preparation, which is a cleansing kind of process, and then you have the journey. And the journey of a pilgrimage is usually done en masse. There's usually lots of people who take the journey at the same time, most of the time. A part of that is a coming out of a tradition where the world was less safe. And so if you're going to make a journey, it was better to make it with a bunch of people because you had a better chance at surviving. And today, we've gotten rid of most of the major carnivores out there. So if you want to take a personal pilgrimage journey, you probably can do that and survive it without much problem, right? But generally speaking, even now, pilgrimages are usually done in group form with a leader. And so again, application at the Academy, it's all the kids that came in at the same time as you did, and then you go through the Academy at the same time as your class, And so one of the things that happens in pilgrimage journeys is that you learn about the people who are on the journey with you. Some of them are your friends, some of them you thought were your friends, and you wake up with a knife in your back, and then some of them are just your enemies from the very beginning, right? And so part of the pilgrimage journey is about discovering that. You guys do that as you go through, your experience at the Academy, I'm sure. Now, the other thing about the next step of the journey is the experience. Usually, a pilgrimage journey is to a specific location where there's something sacred going on, and so then you have an experience. It can be a healing, a salvation, it can be all kinds of things, some kind of a transformative experience. So you can go to a temple where there's a relic. At the Academy, I would say the experience is the whole thing leading up to graduation. So I think graduation would be the experience where you dress in a funny outfit, flat hat, and you do ritual stuff, and you meet the goddess. Elisa Stevens actually hands you, to get that close to the vagina with teeth is very scary, so it's very nervous stuff. It used to happen right here, at the Masonic Lodge. This was for years where we held all of our graduation services. But now your classes have gotten so huge. We have such a huge graduating class that I think now they're renting out the Cow Palace for you guys, and so it's just because it's such a huge thing. But we used to be there. It was really great. It's very convenient since Elisa lives up here. She has the only single-family dwelling here on Nob Hill. There's a lot of people live up here in condos and stuff, but there's only one single-family dwelling, and that's owned by Elisa Stevens. Yellow house right at the end of Crocker Garage. The Crocker Garage is the straight-dated building down there. At the very end is a little yellow house, and so I just always like my students to know exactly where Lisa lives. Well, I don't know why, but I just think it's important for you guys to know exactly where she is. And you'll actually be able to tell very easily because there's medallions on the front that has her initials, E.S., inscribed in the architecture. So anyway, it's down there. You can't miss it. It's very lovely. If you're Elisa Stevens, you can have your initials inscribed into a historical building. This is the little house there. It's across the street from the